Welcome to today's People to People. I'm your host, Courtney Hall. Let's get started. 2018 marks the 113-year anniversary of the Chicago Defender, among the oldest African-American newspapers in the country and certainly one of the most respected. It launches a new year with a new managing editor and a new focus on the horizon. Joining us today, our old friend, the newly named managing editor, Mary Datcher.
Hi.
Welcome and congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we've got a lot to get to, some of the most impactful stories from 2017. Let's just get right started. The first one has a title that just grabs you like that. Do Our Black Children Matter? Tell me a little bit about that one and why you thought it was one of the most impactful.
Well, one thing that we try to do at the Defender is really have impactful headlines that kind of grab you. And our focus, of course, is the needs and the concern from the African-American community perspective in Chicago. National Teachers Academy had been really on the forefront of developing in their academic level. They went from a level 3, since 2009 all the way now to a level 1 at the time of the interviews that we had with them. And there has been a distinction between the South Loop community, and we're talking about new residents, those that are more from affluent families, and the issues that were concerning overcrowdedness at South Loop Elementary.
Can you break down for us level 3 versus level 1?
Well, level 3 is when you're really kind of in you're on life support academically with the schools and what they require on the curriculum level. And level 1 is when you're just kind of climbing and you're pretty much at that top. Well, since our interview, of course, National Teachers Academy, which has 85% student enrollment, specifically mostly African-American students, but they also have 10% of their students that are actually gifted students where they do have a certain coursework for students that are really on that next level. And what we found is in interviewing some of the parents, there is a situation with CPS that's proposing to turn this school from K-8 to a high school. And that means that they're also considering pushing in the boundaries. So a lot of those students that were more from our community will also be considered being pushed out or even being relocated up until they graduate. And that leaves more room for parents that have kids that are predominantly in the South Loop area.
Right.
So this particular topic resonated because it became a major issue. It still is a concern.
Right, and it's not just about school, it's about the changing dynamics of a neighborhood.
Exactly, gentrification, and two sides going at it. Unfortunately, Alderman Pat Dow got in the middle because the parents of the students at the time felt that she was siding with some of the families in South Loop, and it wasn't that case so much on her end as opposed to, hey, we're dealing with an overcrowded situation at South Loop Elementary.
Let's move on to another really interesting one, Derailed, which is an eminent domain situation in Inglewood.
Yes. So this story is actually done by City Bureau, which is a non-for-profit organization that focuses on social restorative justice cases. And we tap into City Bureau, and the reporters there for a great deal of more investigative work. And it really does take the tale of 3 families along the railway line that will be actually pushed out. We're talking about 2 to 3 generations of families that have had their homes either inherited from their mother, their father, or even their grandparents. And because of the expansion of the railway, which is in the Inglewood, it goes through Inglewood, it goes through Gage Park, it goes through a great deal of our South Side community. But in this particular case, there is some underlining development that's happening that you may not always hear about it. And unfortunately, this family, the families that we reflected on, they're dealing with this right now.
Surviving the Storm is a story that was also very impactful, and this is about breast cancer.
Yes.
It's the story of 2 different women, one considered a survivor who's in remission and one dealing with the issues of treatment. And what I liked about this story is you highlighted the African-American component and some very interesting facts in there. Can you tell us about those? So
we had a young lady who is barely 30, and she has 3 kids, and she's dealing with treatment now, and she works for the post office. I don't really want to say her name right now, but if you look on our story or online, you'll see. And she's going through, difficulty, but at the same time, she's trying to raise her family. She's trying to manage her job. She has the support of her employees, around her coworkers, as well as her family. But at the same time, she is finding a way of getting through it. And these are the stories that we normally hear from women who have to juggle. They can't take off 2 or 3 months. They have to work while providing for their families. And at some point, it was interesting because on the flip side, we also talked to an entrepreneur who based her company out of what she was going through with breast cancer and really fine-tuning hair and beauty products that are compatible to women that are going through any bouts of cancer. And it just shows two sides of the spectrum, but they all come together because at the end of the day, it's all about the hope.
And some startling statistics in there specific to the African American community. I want to skip to No Justice, No Peace, the story of victims of the Burge era. That was really impactful, obviously, for your readers.
Yeah, Mark Maxon is one of many victims that fell or wrongfully accused by the torture of John Burge and his detectives at the time during the 1970s to the 80s. And he went in there for 20-something years. And what the story reflects on is not only his situation, but what has happened with the financial impact that it's had on Chicago taxpayers and the amount of monies that have had to be issued out because of those cases. This right now is pending for one of the highest amounts right now that they're going for. And the way that it's looking right now, we will make sure that we keep our readers in tune, but it's not a pretty case.
So many interesting things happened in 2017. We want to look ahead to 2018, and you've got some interesting things on the horizon. I want you to pick one of them. I know we've got some political races coming up. We've got CPS, the ongoing drama, but what would you say is the most important topic that you guys are looking ahead to for this year?
Well, one thing, and we saw in a press conference yesterday that I attended with the Democratic gubernatorial candidate Chris Kennedy, is he did point out a situation that's been going on for a while, and that is the flight of Black residents, even low-income residents out of Chicago, and the effects of everything that we talked about, from the school closings all the way down to the disadvantage of economic stimulation in our communities. It is a major issue, and it has become a racial issue. And those are things that we will be reflecting more into on where is that going? How can we embetter that? How can we make our public officials more accountable in making sure that there is less and less of that flight, because there's so much history as our community has in building up Chicago, and we don't want to see that dissipate.
All right, we're going to be watching for what you do, Mary Datcher. Thank you so much for joining us. And you can find the Chicago Defender on stands now and online at chicagodefender.com.